All right. Hello, Zoomcasters. It's Tuesday night, January 18th, 2022, and it's time for another USA Hockey Officiating Program Zoomcast. Today's topic is the USA Hockey Officiating Program Update. We'll get to that topic in just a moment, but just want to do a quick round of introductions. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is BJ Ringrose, and I'm the manager of the USA Hockey Officiating Education Program at USA Hockey, and I'll be your Zoomcaster master for this session. Joining me tonight are three outstanding panelists joining us from the USA Hockey referee section. And for those of you who don't quite understand what the referee section is in USA Hockey Hockey itself is broken down into different components. Obviously, we have our referee world. There's the coaching world. There's the youth hockey world. There's the adult hockey world, girls and women's, and so forth. Well, to govern those areas, as we've said many, many times on many of these Zoomcasts and seminars across the country, USA Hockey is primarily a volunteer-driven organization. We have the USA Hockey National Office staff, of which I'm lucky enough to be a part, but the reality is we have roughly about 60 to 75 people here in the USA Hockey office, and with roughly 600,000 members between the players, coaches, and officials, there's no possible way 60 to 75 people can govern over that many people. And that's where it boils down to our hardworking, dedicated, volunteer members that serve as coaching education program coaches and chiefs, as well as district registrars, district risk managers, referees and chiefs, and even break it down into smaller areas like state referees and chiefs and local supervisors to help this overall organization function properly. So by the referee section, what I mean is the overall governing body of USA Hockey representing the officiating world. Referee section is made up by our different referees and chiefs. Of course, we have 13, technically 13 sections or 13 districts within USA Hockey when you include Alaska on top of the other 12. But we also have our newly appointed female development referee in chief, our disabled hockey referee in chief, and of course, David LaBuda, who serves as our national referee in chief. And ultimately, they as a group govern over USA Hockey. And the way this comes into the bigger picture is, as we'll start to talk about, is coming out of our USA Hockey Winter Meetings, which just wrapped up this past weekend. This is where a lot of the biggest decisions were made. So we'll do the introductions real quick, but then we'll get back to the winter meetings and discussing what that is all about. So first of all of our panelists is David LaBuda, as I mentioned earlier. He's from the Chicago, Illinois area. USA Hockey official for 40 plus years and current national referee in chief of USA Hockey. He also serves on the playing rules committee. So much like the referee section that governs over USA Hockey, we have our playing rules committee, which we've talked about multiple times, which basically they head up the rule change process and overall governance and management of our playing rules. They met as well during those winter meetings as well. And he also serves on the USA Hockey Officiating Task Force, which some of you might be aware of if you pay attention to your email inboxes, some of the social media announcements that go on out there in the USA Hockey social media channels. And we'll talk a little bit about that task force in just a few minutes. Also joining Dave is Jim Weaver. Jim Weaver is from the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. He's a USA Hockey official for 30 plus years and currently serves as our Mid-American District referee in chief. And also we have Dan Ellison. Dan Ellison being from the San Diego, California area, USA Hockey official for roughly about 30 years, give or take. I couldn't quite boil it down when I looked into the registration records, but we'll say plus or minus. He serves as our Pacific District referee in chief and one of our newer district referee in chiefs. And just to throw him to the wolves a little bit, Dan, you've been on the job for about 2 years now. What's the biggest thing that you've learned in the 2 years that you've served?
You know, it's interesting as you transition from officiating to the administrative side of it, but where there's a lot of sentiment that it's us versus them. That's a bad perception because we are all in this together, and there's a tremendous amount of support for officiating from all the sections and all the divisions within USA Hockey, and it's a lot of fun to see that in action.
Great, thanks, Dan. I'll pitch it back to Weave. Weave, you've served for at least you're coming up on 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. You're somewhere got to be in the 8 to 9 to 10 year range now, if not more. During your tenure, has the job gotten easier or more challenging?
Well, that's a good question. The way things are going these days, it's gotten a lot more challenging in a lot of ways. But tracking what Dan said, it's amazing the cooperation that we have. You know, through at least at the district level, you know, for sure, we operate all the time. You know, the people at that level, there are a lot of volunteers. As we said, they're all pretty much on the same page. We're here to try and make the game better for all the participants, you know, referees, coaches, players, and everybody. And the task force that Dave LaBuda is on now is going to hopefully enhance that experience also for everybody else. But yeah, and this has been a little bit of a challenge. I thought we would be a little easier in some ways because I thought people would be happy to be back and playing hockey in somewhat normal circumstances. But I think a lot of the frustrations that people are experiencing with in their COVID experiences are kind of boiling over when they show up in the ice rink. And I think that's been a source of some issues this year, over and above what we normally have.
No doubt.
But the officials are great. Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt. And I'll back up to Dave, who I started with. Dave, just coming out of winter meetings, what was your biggest takeaway out of winter meetings? What was the thing that you know, either surprised you the most or just pleased you the most coming out of winter meetings? You choose. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, when we get together as a group in both our winter meetings and our annual Congress in June, it's always exciting to get together with the rest of the organization. But this time in particular was particularly exciting, and because it's been 2 years since we've actually seen each other face to face, and I think that was something that everybody really gained more appreciation for, of how much more productive we can be when we are able to meet in person.
Great, thanks, Dave. So getting on to our topic here with the USA Hockey Officiating Program Update, like I mentioned, we just came out of our winter meetings. USA Hockey as a whole, we have 2 sets of meetings, basically roughly running about 6 months apart. Midwinter meetings are meetings we run basically, obviously, mid-season. We do it every January, takes place down in Florida. Where basically all of our key volunteers, again, those coaches and chiefs, referees and chiefs, district registrars, risk managers, district directors, affiliate presidents, all these key movers and shakers within USA Hockey come into Florida. And this is when we break off into our individual sections, councils, committees, and so forth, and actually get to meet in person. The other set is the USA Hockey Annual Congress, which happens in June. And the major difference there is it's a little bit more of a bigger affair. We tend to have more of our volunteer representatives there as opposed to winter meetings when things are going on with real life and within the hockey world. Not necessarily all of our volunteers are able to make it due to personal commitments. But at Annual Congress, on top of the normal meetings that we have as councils and committees and sections and so forth, that's also when our legislative proposal process happens, when we vote on legislative proposals that govern over USA Hockey, when you think policies, bylaws, all that kind of stuff, as well as the playing rule changes when the ultimate playing rule change process happens, which happened just this past summer, in summer of 2021. So coming out of these midwinter meetings, again, this is when all our volunteers come together and actually, as Dave said, get to sit in the same room. The hockey world's getting smaller as we get more savvy with email and Zoom meetings and stuff like that. This is great that we can keep up to date on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis, but sometimes you have to be in the same room to really kind of make decisions and to really get a read with how the overall group really feels about something. So coming out of this, a lot of decisions were made, and now we're going to discuss some of them. But before we get on to the referee section specifically, I'm going to ask Dave LaBuda to, well, first I'm going to launch a poll, but then I'm going to have Dave talk about the officiating task force and what is the mission and the goals and why that thing was developed in the first place. But first, our poll. I'm going to launch our first poll of the evening. And as you can see, we have 3 questions. First one being true or false. At least one time in my officiating career, I have seriously thought about quitting as an official. It's a simple true or false question. Just think over for a few seconds and think about over the course of your career whether you thought about leaving as an official. Second question, my biggest pain point, and I think you all know what I mean by pain point, with officiating ice hockey. My biggest pain point with officiating ice hockey is USA Hockey registration, the overall registration process to earn your card and crest. Local politics between the peers that you work with, the game assignment process, advancing with opportunities with games and things like that. You know, what's your biggest pain point? And then lastly, true or false, I think local hockey organizations should have some input regarding the game assignment process. So we'll give you about another 20 or 30 seconds to register your responses. All right. Looks like just about all of you are in. Give you about maybe another 5 to 10 seconds. Don't think about it too hard. And by the way, this is all anonymous. We're not tracking your answers or anything like that. We're not worried about specifically whether you specifically have considered quitting or what your biggest pain point is. Feel free to share your opinions. And with that, we'll say pencils down. So let's share our results. So question number 1, true or false, at least one time in my officiating career, I have seriously thought about quitting as an official. And it was actually surprisingly 50-50. So it's actually kind of reassuring that it isn't nearly as many as you would think. But when you think about the overall grand scheme of things, that when officials join, all of our brand new level 1 officials, let's say we get 10,000 brand new officials this season, we lose half of those from year 1 to year 2. So obviously there is something within the culture of officiating that is driving them towards just leaving and not necessarily coming back. And that's something that we as a section have looked hard at over the last couple of years. Question number 2, my biggest pain point with officiating ice hockey is, and the slightly number 1 reason is abuse from teams and spectators. And that was roughly a little over a third of the responses that came in. Not too far behind that is local politics between peers and the assignment process and opportunities and so forth. USA Hockey registration was about half that, with about 19%. And there are a few that basically said they had others that they're going to share in the chat feature, or they're not an ice hockey official. Third question, true or false? I think local hockey organizations should have some input regarding the game assignment process. And actually, well, I don't know if this is surprising or not. 2/3 of you overall think that they should, that local organizations should have some input, some say in the game assignment process, versus 1/3 that say false. So that's our poll. And from there, we're going to move into our first topic. As like I alluded to earlier, Dave LaBuda is going to share an update regarding the USA Hockey Officiating Task Force, what the mission, the goals, why this thing exists in the first place. So take it away, Dave.
Hey, BJ. First, there's a one question in the question and answer thing, and Nicholas, no, these Zoomcasts cannot count towards your seminar credit. That's an actual live in person. Dan's audio is cutting out for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but no worries. While he's checking his audio settings within Zoom, I'll just follow up with what he was meaning to say. This is not a seminar, and probably over the course of each season that we've been doing these, I probably have like maybe 1 or 2 people that get a little bit confused and think that this 1-hour session is going to fulfill their 6-hour or 3-hour seminar commitment that they have to. And then as I say that, I think that person just left the Zoomcast. So adios to him. And we'll move on to Dave LaBuda and the officiating task force.
Well, I'm sorry that we disappointed that person, but let me first say that I'm very excited that we can share what all that we accomplished during the winter meeting in the official section. The task force that I was appointed to, basically their mission statement was to take a broad look at all the areas of USA Hockey and the hockey world that affects officiating. Obviously, abuse is a big factor, but we're also charged with looking at everything else that may go into what actually affects officiating, the officiating program, particularly in the realm of recruitment and retention, particularly retention. And what we've been doing so far is we are in the discussion information gathering stage. There's a lot of information that we feel we need to get to and get as much information as we can before we start formulating recommendations for change. For those of you who may not be aware of it, the members of that task force, I'm going to quickly go through them. Keith Barrett, who is the vice president of our youth council, is also chair of this task force. Other members of that committee are Bob Mancini, who's the assistant executive director, I believe in charge of hockey operations. Also Don Gould, who is chair of the girls women's section. Bob Joyce, who's the Massachusetts affiliate president. Mike Milligan, who's the coach-in-chief of the Southeastern District, Tom Klein, who's a member of the Adult Council, Al Bloomer, who's the retired national coach-in-chief and is currently a member of the Rules Committee and its Retention Committee, Jack Witt, who's the former Michigan coach-in-chief and is also a member of the Rules Committee and Retention Committee, Scott Zelkin, who's the manager of our Junior Development Program, Kristen Wright, who's an ADM manager, Roger Grillo, who's an ADM manager, and myself. So I hope people can see there's a diverse perspective of the game and how those different parts of USA Hockey that they're a member of affect and could affect, and what needs to change in those areas with regards to officiating. The task force a few weeks ago put out a survey, a retention survey for 2 members. It sent emails to all officials who did not re-register as officials with USA Hockey for the 3 years previous to the pandemic year, because we wanted to know what is it that made those officials decide not to register. We're still in the process of analyzing those results. And once we do, we suspect that it's going to be a lot of information for us to get a hold of and to be able to, base some of our recommendations on. And lastly, if anybody on this call or anybody who's on this call that you should talk to wants to contribute information with regards to the whole abuse issue, the officiating issue, and things like that, they certainly can get in contact with me. My contact information is on almost every piece of officiating USA Hockey material, or any other member of the USA Hockey task force, officiating task force, and that information can be found on the USA Hockey website.
Thanks, Dave. And just to follow up with what Dave said, regarding finding contact information for various representatives within USA Hockey, if you go to the main USA Hockey website and hover over the familiar officials tab at the top of the page, and the drop-down menu comes underneath it, off to the right of that drop-down menu, you'll see officiating directory. And that officiating directory page, you'll find contact information not only for national office staff, but also key national volunteer representatives. And underneath that, you'll find the district website links to go to the various districts to find contact information for, say, Jim Weaver in the Mid-Am district and his support staff underneath him, as well as Dan and his support staff out there in the Pacific district. But Dave, you're going through that list of all those representatives. Diverse doesn't even begin to sum it up. We have representatives from Youth Council itself. We have representatives from the Girls Women's section. But even on top of that, we have the Youth Vice President, Keith Barrett, who serves the executive board of USA Hockey underneath the president, Mike Trimboli, and also the director of the Hockey Development Department, which is not only my boss, he's also my boss's boss. So kind of a key mover and shaker within the USA Hockey office. We have high-ranking members within both the volunteer membership and the national office staff taking a heavy look at this. And then I believe Mike Trimboli has sort of kept a thumb on these talks as well. Has he not, Dave?
Yes, he has. The president of USA Hockey is an ex officio member of all committees and task force and everything else.
And that's kind of the interesting thing as well. Mike Trimboli, he's proud to say he was an official. He might have only been for a couple of seasons, but he has been out there. He's worn the sweater and carried the whistle, and he's been an official. So he can relate a little bit to what we're going through. Keith Barrett is still an active USA Hockey official, been an official for many, many years. So having someone that high ranking within the Youth Council and serving on this committee really brings some credibility that we aren't screwing around here. We're taking a really, really hard look at this overall. Just to kind of, again, back to Dave, what are some things what are possibly some pain points that this council is looking at?
Well, we're obviously looking at the verbal abuse issue, as well as, unfortunately, the physical abuse issue. We're also looking, quite frankly, at possibly coming up with a more detailed listing of appropriate behavior by spectators, and basically spectator behavioral or guidelines. I really don't want to go any further with that right now, because, as I said, we're still really in the information gathering stage, and we really haven't formulated any solid recommendations or anything like that, because there's really it's a multifaceted problem. And we just can't say it's just one thing that we need to address.
Great, thanks, Dave. If nothing else, I think this is sort of, I think one of the other main purposes of this task force is to bring the officiating community into the greater sense of the hockey community. And I say that as kind of a primer and a heads up for our next upcoming Zoomcast, which is February 1st, which the title of that Zoomcast is Hockey Community. And basically Matt Leaf will be on that with a couple of other representatives, not necessarily officiating representatives, but other representatives of that task force to discuss where the officiating community, where the officiating world ties into the greater hockey community. And I think, Dan, you kind of talked about that when I asked you that very first question, Dan. You talked about getting that bigger sense of it can't work if it's us versus them. We have to be a part of it. They have to be a part of us. Correct, Dan?
That's exactly right. And it's fun to see it in action. And I think so often the officials, when they're out there working a game, don't feel that because all they're experiencing is the abuse that's coming from either the teams or the spectators. But as Dave mentioned, there's a lot of people that are invested in curing this problem so that it goes away. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long process, but it's changing behavior. And I see it happening. I see the support for this happening, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. And there's the affiliates now that are addressing spectator behavior, and they're asking us to write reports up when we eject spectators because they're going after the teams. That's just one example of the support that's there. So,
and BJ, if I can add one last comment that came to mind while you and Dan were talking, and that is, part of the mission of the task force is also to get all the parts of USA Hockey to understand that everyone has got to be part of the solution here, that it cannot just rest on one section like just the official section. Everybody has got to be part of the solution here.
Thanks, Dave. And I'll throw it to Weave now. Being a representative, Weave, at the district level now, as the district referee and chief of Mid-Am, I'm sure over that time you've found the importance of building those relationships within the other areas of USA Hockey, not only amongst local hockey associations throughout your district, but even your coach in chief, your district registrar, and just basically everyone needs to work together. Correct, Dave? Or correct, Weave?
Yeah, absolutely. I found in my dealings with people at the district level, they're all 100% on board with this and always have been and supportive. But the action that needs to be taken to take it down to the team and the fan level, the grassroots level, is going to takes a lot of involvement from them. If coming from us, it's pretty much self-serving from our section. And it makes for a better environment for everybody. I mean, they all realize it's a better environment for the players and the coaches and everything else. And the abuse things, not only goes to officials, but goes to players and coaches too. It just makes for a whole bad experience for everybody. And it's usually only a few people. And it's just hard to get other people to stand up and say, hey, we got to put a stop to this. And some of the main ones that need to take the action can't be the officials. We need to get on board. I think they will. They need some direction and some support and some backup and really some enforcement and penalties along with it to make it happen.
No, I think you make some absolutely fantastic points. We not only just basically the idea of there does need to be a trickle-down effect. In other words, it can't just be this officiating task force telling everybody what to do, or the USA Hockey Executive Committee telling everybody what to do. It has to trickle down from the national level down to the district level, to the state level, and ultimately out to our hockey organizations that are getting the best information, the best advice, the best guidelines to follow to implement a better culture. That seems to be what we're really, really talking about here, the culture of the game within the building. It's one thing basically to improve the culture towards officials, but look, if all that negativity is existing within the building directed towards officials, it's got to be spreading elsewhere as well, between spectators or between one team spectators and the players of the other team and so forth. That's not an environment I think anyone wants to play in. Correct, Weave?
Yeah, I agree 100%, BJ. It's not just in hockey, it's everywhere. And really, USA Hockey likes to be, it has been in the past on many issues, a leader. And I think there's a real push within USA Hockey from a pride factor that they'd like to be the ones that, take the first steps and maybe try and solve this issue that permeates through every sport.
That's a good point. I typically, I converse on a regular basis with a lot of other national governing bodies like U.S. Lacrosse, U.S. Soccer, USA Swimming. We all have the same problems. We all, when we get together, whether it be in person or whether we're talking over the phone or via Zoom, we're all running into the same issues with abuse and stuff like that. And I think that, as you said, that USA Hockey is standing up and doing what we can to look into and look hard at these different issues to fix them. We may end up being a leader, and hopefully we come up with some best practices and policies that help the other NGBs. With that, we will move on to our second set of topics, which I'm guessing a lot of you might be chomping at the bit for, which regards USA Hockey membership and registration. So just before we get to that, we're going to launch our second poll of the evening. I can get that thing to open. There we go. So launched the second poll of the evening. Question number 1, where do you think 2021-22 membership numbers compare to last season? We are less officials than last season. We have roughly the same amount of officials as last year, and that's basically plus or minus 5%, somewhere within that range. That's roughly the same amount as last year. Or we have more officials than last season. My biggest pain point with regard to annual registration is the membership fee, the open book exam, the classroom seminar, the online education modules, the closed book exam, safe sport, or background checks. And question number 3, for level 2 and level 3 and level 4 officials only, and you level 1s that are sitting here in this Zoomcast, just take a seat, because this one pertains only to our 2s, 3s, and 4s out there. Given a choice, I would rather complete a longer open book exam than 2 exams. So would you rather either complete the open book exam only, and that's it, might be a little bit longer, but that's all you have to do, or you'd rather say false to that question, and I'd much rather take the open book exam and the closed book exam separately. So again, give you about another 20 seconds, give or take, to submit your answers. Okay, with that, we'll wrap it up. Share our results. For question number 1, where do you think 2021-22 membership numbers compare to last season? And a little over half of you, 64%, actually even closer to 2/3 of you, think we have less officials than last season. So greater than 5% less than last season. And kind of split evenly amongst, we have roughly about the same versus we have 5% more or greater. Second question, my biggest pain point with regard to annual registration is, and the number 1 answer there was the closed book exam. That was about 1/3 of you say the closed book exam is your biggest pain point. The online education modules and the classroom seminar and safe sport, those roughly about 20% apiece. They were kind of neck and neck and tied. And then question number 3, for the 2, 3s, and 4 officials only, given a choice, I would rather complete a longer open book exam than 2 exams. And with that, just about half of you said true. I'd much rather take a longer open book exam only than the rest of you, which was kind of split, 25% here, 25% there, saying false. I'd rather do an open book exam and a closed book exam. So those are the results of our poll. And now we'll actually get into the topic. And getting back to that first question, we'll just kind of run through some numbers here with regards to 2021-22 registration. At this point, nationally, at this point compared to this point last season, we're actually up 20%. So really, really reassuring numbers. Overall, 20% increase over last season. Compared to back in 2019-20, before the pandemic dropped on us, we're still 7% behind. So haven't quite stopped all the bleeding and recovered from all the bleeding from the membership and all that, but we're recovering and things are going really well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, our biggest loss last season during the pandemic year in 2020-21 was hands down level 1 officials.
Correct.
We easily had, I believe it was at least 50%, if not a little bit greater, loss in our level 1 officials. Those brand new officials. And we're happy to say that this year, our overall numbers compared to last year, we're up 58%. So maybe not quite as high as it was back in 2019-20, but we have made a huge, huge surge and a huge increase amongst those new level 1s coming in, which is really good. With that said, it's great to get the numbers in. It's great to be up 20% overall with membership registration. But Dave, what's our biggest concern right now as a referee section?
Well, the biggest concern is, actually, it's more than one concern. I mean, the game has continued to grow, and listen, on the player side, that is recovering faster than they had projected, although it's still not back to pre-COVID numbers. Our biggest concern is with the loss of the level ones from last season, that of course really shrinks the pool of officials who now are going to be coming back, hopefully either as a second year level one or as a level two. And it basically, I mean, it's like the farm club operation. If you don't have those officials starting out, a pool of them, because through natural attrition, you're going to lose a certain number of them. It really shrinks the ranks going up. And that was our biggest concern with the drain in level ones last season.
Thanks, Dave. On top of that, I mean, you certainly talked about the recruitment retention and basically that recruitment and basically filling in from behind and ultimately making sure that we have the next crop of officials. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be young teenagers. You're a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, despite however old you are when you come in as a level one official, we want to keep that official around as long as we can, because even with a 30-year-old official, we can get a good 15 to 20 years out of that. And that's a good 15 to 20 years worth of experience that we could keep out there on the ice, regardless of how old you are. But at the same time, I think a lot of our topics also talked about, ultimately, you get 24,000. We have just over 24,000 officials registered right now. Well, registering and paying your money is one thing. But if you don't complete and get that crest, then you're not working games. It doesn't bring a whole lot of value to our organization and our local associations. Correct, Dan? What do you think about that as far as creation or completion and its effects on the overall membership?
Well, as you bring up, it's not just the loss to our organization. It's look at the financial loss. It's depending on if you're just a level one official where it's a $45 commitment, or a level 2, 3, or 4 where it's a $90 commitment. That's money out of their pocket that they aren't completing the process. There is a lot of value in, especially once we have officials for I would say 4 years and beyond. I know that the retention pops up after the second year, but once we have them 4 or 5 years and they've been involved and ingrained in the system and learning with it, there's a lot of value. And to see that go away, at some point, we all get to a point where being on the ice is a lot more difficult as we get older. But to have that experience and the ability to learn how to communicate with coaches and players and fans and administrators is huge. And the longer you're in this, the more experience you gain and the better our product becomes and the better team we become.
Thanks, Dan. One of the questions that just popped up in the Q&A feature, which I didn't quite cover at the beginning of the top of the Zoomcast, but if you have any questions you want to share with the panel, by all means, use that Q&A feature to submit your question, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. And somebody asked, what were the numbers for the officials that paid their registration, attended a seminar, but for some other reason never fully completed? And I don't have those numbers for that specific scenario in front of me, unfortunately. That being said, these numbers, these statistics of basically our overall numbers of registration and where the overall membership stands with regards to, are they complete? If they're not complete, why aren't they complete? And we even throw age a little bit into there of our 18 and over officials, how many have completed and what are they missing versus 17 and under, where they stand as far as completion rates. And whether they passed the open book exam, whether they passed the closed book exam, all that information was shared with the district RICs during the winter meetings. So by all means, feel free to reach out to either us at the national office, or you can reach out to your district referee in chief for those statistics, and they'll be more than happy to share that with you. So,
BJ, I can give a ballpark answer to that. A couple of weeks ago is when we did the last analysis to answer that question, and at that time we were just coming up on 24,000 registered officials, and at that moment in time there were 18,000 who were complete. So do the math.
Okay. Well,
yeah, I could have BJ. I started to massage those numbers a little bit to look at them, but seminar is not the main one. We get over 90% typically this referees register to attend a seminar. The numbers are much higher in the modules, and surprisingly even the open book test and some screening and things. But I think the seminar itself is the smallest one. They go to that level and just things they can do on their. We kind of get baffled because we keep putting reminders and things out and wonder why people don't complete something that they started. And even last year, I really tried to push guys that did it and they didn't want to complete because there wasn't much hockey to do, and they said they weren't going to bother. So if you get complete this year, number one, you're registered through next November. Otherwise, we had a lot of people scrambling in the beginning of this season to try to get all their requirements back in because they weren't eligible to skate. You know, it's just a lot of things. But the seminars, I give credit to our seminar staff. We do a lot of them, and we get everybody to a seminar. It's the things they have to do at home that for some reason don't get done. I don't have an answer for that.
And you make a really, really interesting point, Weave. Like basically, look, you and your staff, which is volunteer, by the way, all of your seminar coordinator, Ken Henley there in the Mid-Am district, and then your local seminar coordinators who basically state by state host these things. They do everything they can to serve their overall membership and make sure that seminars are available to them. But at the same time, if people aren't informing them that if the demand isn't being driven home, in other words, if they're not aware that the demand is out there, then what's the point in hosting a seminar? You know, if basically we're only going to get 5 to 10 people ultimately to show up. So there is a sort of a supply and demand process to this. When we come out of the gate in June and July and August, yeah, tons of seminars around. We know the demand's going to be there. But as we get on to say November, December, January, later in the year, you know, unless we know that people are going to be there, then why schedule? Why basically block that time off? You're talking about volunteers taking time out of their personal schedules to host these things and put the work in. You know, can they do it basically for 5 to 10 officials at a pop on a week-by-week basis when there's lots of other things going on? But the other fine point, Weave, is basically, you know, you look at your data out there in the Mid-Am, your data may be completely different from Dan in the Pacific District. And, you know, what ultimately is kind of holding people back, what's missing and so forth. And that's really where it kind of gets kind of interesting when we start to have these discussions and make decisions on what we need to change as far as making the registration process successful, which we'll talk about those changes in a minute. But some other interesting some facts when we talk about missing components, currently complete right now out of those 24,000, 80% of them are complete at this time. And that actually runs on a national average. Typically, every single year for the last 20 years, 20% of the officials that register with us do not complete. And we've basically been banging our heads against the desk to even get it to 85%, or if we're really, really lucky, 90%. Suddenly that's how many more thousands of officials that are sticking around and getting from whatever year to the next season. But overwhelmingly, out of that 80% that have completed, of the level ones that have registered, which is about 11,000, I think at last count, we have roughly 11,000 level 1 officials right now. Only 65% have completed at this time, which is a far staggering larger amount than any other level. And then of the missing components, 2 of the bigger ones were the classroom seminar and the open book exam, which were 2 things that we kind of looked at in addition to everything else. But again, those level 1s were the ones that were missing, which I don't know, guys, anything to think about that, how we raise these numbers? I mean, I think we discussed this a little bit down in Florida, did we not?
Okay.
Well,
yeah, we
go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Yeah, we did talk about it. And I think you try and figure out what goes through people's mind. They register, they think they're going to do it, and they realize they don't have the time commitment, or they don't get the exposure. A lot of things that the task force is going to deal with, I think, is a lot, at least for officials starting out. And some of them, maybe the process is a little bit daunting, a lot of requirements, and, you know, well-intentioned in the beginning on what their expectations might have been. They might not have been correct. And just realize there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, and possibly just lose interest and decide that don't ever complete it. You know, the problem with that is we don't get them on the ice, which is where you really want to sell the official. I think once they get there and do it and find that they really like it and can be good at it, that they'll stay.
No, very good point, Weave. It's one thing to get the card and crust in their hands, but if we don't get them on the ice for games, then Again, what value are we bringing to them? They did their due diligence. They got the card and crest. Well, if we're not getting them games, then we're not following up on really what we owe to our membership overall, and giving them the opportunity to go out there and work. Dave, what were you about to say before we cut in?
Well, actually, Weave gave me a great lead-in, as you just did, and the group we did spend a fair amount of time talking about what can we do to motivate people across the board to complete, not only at level 1 but at all levels, and I'd kind of like to ask Dan just to weigh in here, and I think the group came up with some really good reasons why it's beneficial to complete each level of registration and to move up each registration level when you become eligible, because we got the sense that maybe some people don't understand the benefits of moving up.
Well, you talk about the challenge, I think, with the level 1 officials, and this was a thing that we took a real hard look at last year and made modifications to the seminar process to help those level 1 officials get in and get through the seminar, in that their online modules were part of their curriculum for this year when they attended the seminar. So essentially, if they attended the seminar, got their ICE session, when they left there, all they had to do is complete their open book test. And if they were 17 or over, they had to do the safe sport. And if they were 18 or over, they had to do a background screening. So we tried to simplify that process. And the challenge, as everybody has talked about, is how do you motivate that 35% that's out there? And I know that there are life issues that get in the way that prevent some people, but the majority of those people, we've tried some things, and there are different thoughts out there, and some work in some areas of the country that don't work in other areas. We have some areas of the country where there's one rink in 500 miles. So trying to get those officials up and motivated is one thing. Now, for the level 2, 3, and 4 officials, what we've looked at is to try and, once you're a level 1 official, obviously the next move is to level 2, and then what we've taken a lot of effort to encourage people to move from level 2 to level 3 and or level 4. And part of that is one of the key things is the ultimate goal for a lot of officials is to work a national tournament. Well, previously we had it in the guidebook that you had to be a level 4 official to referee at a national championship. And we've looked at that and felt that there were a lot of qualified officials that weren't level 4, that were also in the level 3 ranks, that would be eligible to work national championships. So to move from level 2 to level 3, right away, you're increasing your opportunities to work higher level games and that opportunity to go to a national championship. And for those of you that haven't been to one, it's an incredible event, and you really should put the effort into trying and get there. And by doing that, reach out to your local supervisors, your state supervisors, and your district RICs like Jim and myself to help get you there. But there's a lot of benefit to moving up from the different levels to attain the highest level you can.
Well, not only that, I'll add to that, Dan, is that once you become a level 3 once you become a level 3 or higher, the registration requirements lessen. Yeah. In that, well, first of all, as a level 3, as a returning level 3, you can test out of your modules, meaning you can just go right to the quizzes and answer the questions and hopefully pass them. And that certainly is a time saver in that regard. Same thing with level 4. The other thing to remember is this, and this is something that maybe some people don't realize, is certain parts of the registration process we do not have control over. The Safe Sport program and the background check program are things that are mandated to us through by the federal government through the Amateur Sports Act, and in turn through the Olympic Committee, whom recognizes USA Hockey as the official body for ice hockey in this country. So those are things that we have to do. We don't have a choice. So really the only things that we require are the testing parts of it and the attendance at the seminar, depending on your level. So, I mean, I think it's important for people to understand that.
Yeah, Dave, thank you very much, because I did leave out the fact that the level 3 seminar is an hour less than the level 2 seminar. And at the level 2, there's a mandatory ice session, where at level 3 there is not. And then also, once you become a level 3 official or level 4 for 3 consecutive years, then you're eligible to get tenured. And once you get tenured, then you don't have to attend an annual seminar. So there are a lot of benefits to moving to those higher levels.
Thanks.
Yeah, we did that on purpose to reward our longtime officials who have been dedicated to the game for, you know, at least 3 or 4 years, all the way up to 10, 15, 20-year officials. We want to give them, and they demonstrate, obviously, when they can test out of their modules, that they have the rules knowledge that we're looking for. And we try to make it better. So don't be afraid of that level 3, all your level 2s out there.
All really good points, guys. Basically, there's a lot of incentive to advance, as opposed to just going to level 2 and just basically staying put there and not advancing to something. The better opportunities and greater opportunities, particularly when it comes to registration, the process gets easier the higher you go up for the most part. So with that being said, we've had a few more questions trickle in here, and I might be able to knock out 3 with one simple question coming from myself. Somebody asked about different forms of communication outside of just reminder emails of what you're missing and, hey, you still need to get your registration done. Those emails that come from USA Hockey. Another person asked about, or really more of a statement, really, they talked about how they use mentor programs locally to work with those new officials. So it'd be a veteran official working with a newer local official, reminding them, getting on their case, and making sure they get their open book exam done. And then someone talked about, somebody asked about whether there was any discussion in Florida about the evaluation program and the mentor program. And I'll kind of hopefully sweep all those 3 questions up in one simple question, and I'll pitch it to Weave. You know, the idea of a mentor program at a local level, you know, basically that local association pairing off veteran officials off with new officials, new level 1s or returning level 1s. Is there a great strength in doing that type of process, particularly certainly on ice, of basically showing them where to go and mentoring them, showing them around from a positioning and judgment standpoint on the ice, but even in the off ice aspect of following up with these young guys and making sure they're getting their different steps fulfilled? What do you think, Weave?
Well, we think that's a key component. I mean, you can teach so much in a seminar, some basic information, you know, from an officiating side, even those that have played or coached in the game, to look at things from an officiating side and show them some of the, in an ice session, show them some of the positioning and some of the procedures that we do. But it's so important to get on the ice with a mentor, hopefully, whether you shadow them or they shadow you, and to be used to be on the ice with a whistle in your hand instead of a stick, you know, trying to stay away from the puck instead of going to it, and watching everything and being prepared and make yourself that you can make the calls. When you see it offside, you have to blow the whistle to stop play. If you don't blow the whistle, play is going to continue. If you see a penalty, if you don't call it, they're not going to call it on themselves, and the game's going to continue. So just that whole experience, so they have the confidence as they learn the skills and the positioning and things like that. It's a whole lot different from those that haven't been out there on the ice as opposed to watching from the stands. So the whole different level of involvement involved in there. And the other thing we like to do is you know, it's not an easy job, as we all know, especially starting out. You don't get a lot of positive reinforcement, which we've already talked about. And the fact that you have someone to bounce things off, even if you do the first couple games, and then follow through them within the whole year. We like to say every once in a while, you know, be a resource to them. Ask them, they can check out if you have any issues or problems along the way, whether it's filling out an incident report or anything along those lines, or if you have a problem, you know, that you're not sure you handle correctly. And basically, and early on, to make sure, if you get a mentor on early, to make sure that they get complete after they go to their seminar, make sure they get their open book test done, and help them with it if you have to, and monitor them all the way through. I can tell you from a personal standpoint, I got involved in officiating when I was in college. I never even ice skated till I got to college. I got interested in hockey because of proximity to the arena. And there was a couple other friends of mine, and we just started playing a little bit. And I had a friend of mine in the university that wasn't a referee, and sort of started on a dare, to make a long story short. And he was with me the entire first season. Otherwise, I guarantee you, I never would have lasted, you know, in the game, because I really didn't have the good knowledge of the playing background to go with. But to help him was immense, and then gave me the confidence to go on, you know, year after year So the mentoring program is just, it's a key thing to get them on the ice and make it a positive experience and get their confidence up as they progress through the year, or 2 years really, probably ideally.
So there's really something to be said about that personal connection. It's one thing, an email coming from the USA Hockey National Office or coming from the district referee in chief, but that personal connection at the local level, one of your teammates within your local association, reaching out to you and through a personal connection, following up with you, making sure you get your open book exam done, making sure you get your different steps done. There's a lot to be said for that. Correct, Dave? You saw you nodding in agreement with me.
Oh, absolutely. And just so everybody is clear on who's on the Zoomcast, certainly mentoring has come up in the task force discussions, and I suspect will be somewhere in the recommendations.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to add, Beach Day, is getting games scheduled. I mean, it's tough to get the games when the scheduler isn't confident, doesn't know you or understand you really. But if you go in as a mentor and say, hey, I've got so and such a young official and I'd like to work several games with him, and then to follow up to get him into that scheduling process, which is, again, one of the bigger issues we have with retention, to help smooth that process and make sure that they're getting games and check on, make sure they're getting schedules that they should be and not lost in the shuffle.
No, it's absolutely true, Weed. That's a great point. And I'll just pitch it over to Dan in just a second here. I mean, Dan, from a referral standpoint, when you're dealing with someone that you don't know, you formerly used to schedule state tournaments back when you were the state supervisor of California, and now you're responsible for scheduling the district's playoffs within your Pacific District area. You get names from your various support staff throughout the district, but that referral, that credible source that passes that name along to you, that's huge, isn't it?
It is huge. And there's one more question that came up here in the chat from June. And June, you're absolutely right. I think that mentor program at the earliest stages of officiating is an awesome icebreaker, because now you're not walking into a room unknown. You have somebody helping you get assimilated into the local officiating community. And you're right. It's whether it helps you figure out where you want to go with officiating and to do the best you can do. And that it's great. And for me, it's kind of fun because some of the younger guys that I mentored over the years, I got an email or a text the other day that he got selected to work the BioSteel All-Star game yesterday. And hey, will you watch me and give me feedback still? And you're like, oh, all right. Some more hockey in my future.
Great point, Dan. Only just to keep things moving along here, and basically it's pretty clear that there's no way we can keep this overall discussion, this overall episode within the confines of 60 minutes. So we are going to spill over, which is fine. I'm no rookie with breaking the 60-hour mark or 60-minute mark, but I'm going to pass it back to Dave, and Dave is going to summarize the changes that the referee section decided upon for the 2022-23 registration season. So get out your notebooks and your pens and start taking notes, because this is your first taste of what's coming for next season. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, thank you, BJ. And you certainly, the polls that you ran were a great setup for what we're about to go into. And I should note right now that everything that is changing will be posted on the USA Hockey website as we get closer to the beginning of next year's registration season, which, by the way, next year's registration season for officials will start on June 1st and will go until January 1st of 2023. We're ending it earlier than we have in the past, simply because we think that it just creates too many logistical problems by keeping it or extending it into the end of January. News about the testing, the rules testing. The official section has decided to go to just one open book test for all levels. So I can hear the cheering in the background. For level ones, the open book rules exam will be 50 questions and passing will be 35. For level two, the open book rules exam will be 75 questions and passing will be 60. Level three will be 100 questions and the passing will be 85, correct? And for level four, the open book will be 100 questions and 90 correct answers will be passing. Once again, because it's the open book test, everyone, if you fail it the first time, will get a second chance at it. However, as everyone knows, currently there's a 7-day waiting period if you fail it the first time. The referee section has changed those waiting times. For brand new level ones, the waiting period will remain at 7 days before your retake will be available. And we feel that's because we want to make sure that the person takes some time to go through the rule book again, or even just receive the rule book and go through it before they take that retest, because a third retest is unlikely. For level 2, 3s, and 4s, the retake test will be available after 24 hours. Once again, we'll keep the format where in your retake test, you'll only take the questions that you failed and hopefully answer enough of those questions to pass or to receive a passing grade for the level that you applied for. We have also, I'm checking my notes here to make sure I cover everything. We've also made some adjustments to our seminar program. We will have 2 different options for level 1 officials. Level 1 officials can either attend an in-person seminar with an ICE session, which is mandatory, or a hybrid level 1 seminar where some of it will be online. And again, there is a required ICE session that accompanies that level 1 hybrid session. So level 1s are going to have to attend an ICE session no matter what. The classroom can either be in person or can be virtual online. Level 2s, similarly, although there'll be a little more flexibility with that. And level 3s and 4s will all be virtual unless locally at the district level, there's an interest in or a need for in-person seminars, in which case they certainly, the district referee in chief can make a decision to hold in-person seminars for level 2 and 3. Again, the seminars that will be posted are available to any registered official. However, keep in mind, level 1s, you have to attend a NICE session. So you should probably just register for seminars in your local area. Jim, you raised your hand. Did I say misspeak somewhere?
I thought you said level 2 and 3 and you meant 3 and 4 for virtual.
I'd say 3 and 4. I'm sorry. I meant 3 and 4. Thank you.
That's good teamwork right there.
Very much so. Again, I'll emphasize, we have just one open book test. It's an open book test. So again, you know what? There is no more modified closed book exam that's timed.
Yeah, and the reality of it is, since we moved that closed book exam online, it's not really a closed book exam anymore. Particularly with the timing aspect, we put the 90-minute window on it where you have 90 minutes to complete. But the reality of it is, like, yeah, you can look up some and probably not all, but it's just not a true testing, a true test of knowledge by basically you're presented with a game situation, and ultimately you have to, on the spot, come up with your call, given what information you're given within the context of that question. But just a thought for Dan. I'm thinking, Dan, a lot of these choices were basically driven towards transitioning to more of an educational process than basically a testing rule knowledge process. Would you agree with that, Dan?
I would. And the statistical part that was interesting to look at was we had a higher success rate on the closed book test than we did on the open book test. And the whole point of this testing is to have officials be aware and have as good of knowledge as they can on the playing rules. And that's how the tests are being written, to force the officials to open the book to answer the questions. But hopefully they will take it seriously now and put that same focus on the open book test that they were putting into the closed book test,
Thanks, Dan. One question that just trickled in here: will there be a skating test for level 4 officials moving forward? I think I'll put it out there amongst all the RICs. I think the level 4 skating exam is pretty much a thing of the past. Correct, guys?
I will simply say this is that yes, I think the whole level 4 structure is going to be re-examined, and we're going to probably wind up doing something a little different with that.
Yeah, and it's may come back at some point, but at the same time, when you think about the context of skating, when it boils down to your overall ability with skating and ultimately working games, things like that, there's something that has to be said. Like, we could grade you at a seminar, and a seminar instructor can grade you, but what does that necessarily mean to the assigner? And it boils down to basically the assigner has to have a good idea of the membership that he ultimately serves, and putting the right people on the right games and making sure they have the ability to skate the games that he or she assigns those officials to. So, us grading an official on a rather simple skating exam based on the basic fundamentals of skating within USA Hockey has some merit, some meaning towards earning a level 4 card and crest. But at the same time, where does that fit in the grand scheme of the game assignment process? So I think that's where we kind of decided, let the assigner to make that distinction on whether that official is capable of working those higher level games.
The higher levels of hockey require a higher level of skating skill. And I think that it's more important to see the official in game action than just a generic test. So.
No, outstanding point. So with that, we've gotten through pretty much the bulk of our topics for tonight. And as I said before, we've kind of reached and breached the top of the hour as usual with the episodes that I host. So I'll throw it out there. If there's anyone amongst the panel that have any closing thoughts or recommendations or anything they'd like to share with the membership before we sign off here and I wrap things up. Dave, anything you'd like to share before we close things out?
Only this is that, first of all, I want to send out my appreciation to all the officials who have registered and who have completed and who are out there working quite hard and trying to take up the slack for the shortage, the critical shortage of officials. I would simply ask you though, and I realize none of us want to see games to go dark, but at the same point in time, please, take measure of what you're doing out on the ice, and that you don't overextend yourself and do more games than you're capable of doing a good job for the game and for yourself. Because, again, you may be doing it for all the right reasons and with the best of intentions, but at the same point in time, are you really doing the game and yourself a favor by going out there and doing more games than you're capable of doing physically and mentally?
Thanks, Dave. Weave, anything to share in the closing comments?
Yeah, well, that's why I was at when Dan was talking about the open book test, and I had the same feeling about the pass rate for the open book and closed book, how emphasis our officials put on it. But another component of the open book test is to learn how to navigate around the rule book. I don't expect you to know all those rules, but you get into a bind, it makes it a lot easier if you at least have an idea of the structure of it and where you might find something in a hurry if you're filling out an incident report or whatever. But at the point of this whole topic, I thought was, and I think we demonstrated based on the poll questions and some of the answers and things that we have already done. But, as being involved in the RIC group, actually, I think it's 9 years now, I really find that, the group of guys that are there and everyone, including at the national office, the BJ and Matt and Helen, we really want to do what we can to make a better experience for the officials. We really do think about you. And as you can tell, the things about when the question came up about the pain point of being the closed book test, well, we listened to you. We already had felt that and we did it. So please reach out to your referee and chiefs, your local supervisors, whoever it is when you have an issue. We're here to make everything we can and with the task force to make it a better experience for all of you. And everybody that are volunteers in this are really dedicated. That's what I was always impressed with. Dedicated to help everybody out. We really want to help. So if you have ideas or anything, put them out to us and we will certainly look at them. And I guarantee we'll do them all, but they'll certainly get consideration within the group. And some of the things you might come up with will help everybody. Maybe something we never thought of.
Great, Weave. Really, really good point. And before I pass it over to Dan for his closing comments, I'll kind of put a little button on what we was talking about. Ultimately, you as RICs serve our membership, much like Matt, Helen, myself in the national office. We serve our overall membership. And for all those people that listen or basically profess in some grumblings in the locker room about our exams and the exam process and how the questions are written, there's no such thing as trick questions. There aren't. Because the RICs, the truth is the RICs write the questions. Why would an RIC write a question to ultimately deceive and set one of their own members up for failure? And I've said that over many times in seminars and in locker rooms and meetings and things like that. What would be the point of writing a question to purposely mislead our own membership? So, Dan, your closing comments.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out to sit through this. And now I'm going to get into my marketing for a moment. You qualified level 3s and 4s, and for your friends that are qualified level 3s and 4s, the Advanced Officiating Symposium is going to be in San Diego this year, July 29th through the 31st. Beautiful time of the year to come to San Diego. So, and it's a great, it really is a great experience. So if you're thinking about doing it and you're leaning in the 80 to 90% of doing that, take a look and sign up now, because the price goes up after the 31st. So sign up, come to San Diego.
Outstanding plug, Dan. And with that, we will wrap things up. And in true tradition of wrapping things up, we'll start with a quick screen share here where I'll share our upcoming schedule. All of you should be looking at our familiar framework of our upcoming schedule. You can see today was the USA Hockey Program update. Next week, as I said earlier in this episode, is Hockey Community. And Matt Leaf is going to be in the captain's chair for that episode. He's going to be joined with 2 other representatives of the USA Hockey Officiating Task Force to talk a little bit more about the mission and why that task force exists and where the hockey officiating world fits in the greater hockey community and how we can build those relationships and keep those relationships positive and successful to build the best culture and the best environment we can in the rink. After that, on February, on February 15th, we have another You Make the Call. Our Cult Classic is back for another episode. I'll be back in the captain's chair to ruin another one of these episodes with You Make the Call. Got a good collection of video clips coming up where you, as the participant, watch it. We share video clips, and then our 2 panelists that will be on there will share their viewpoints of what the proper call is within the context of the USA Hockey playing rules. Always a fan favorite. We look forward to bringing it back and sharing some interesting clips with all of our participants who come in for that episode. And then on March 1st, we have our IHF event special. Scott Zell going to be hosting that one, and we're going to have some of our premier IHF international officials from the World Junior Competition, from the Olympics, and other IHF events on as panelists to share their experiences and what makes the working IHF events so special. And as a reminder, don't forget to follow us on our social media channels. You'll find us on USA Hockey. You'll find the USA Hockey Officiating channel on Twitter and Instagram. Really, really easy to follow, find, and like all of our postings. And you'll find postings from the officiating world as well as retweets and things like that from the general USA Hockey channel as well. And as a reminder, all of these USA Hockey Zoomcast episodes can be found on YouTube. If you go to usahockey.com, hover over the familiar officials tab at the top, and then go to the Zoomcast page. You'll find links to every single episode we've done. As you've seen, we've done 52 so far that we're proud of, and it's been a really, really fun ride so far. We really enjoy doing this program for you as our membership, and we love doing different topics for you. Just a reminder also, we got a survey coming up. As soon as we wrap up with this Zoomcast, you'll get a survey via SurveyMonkey. Feel free to please fill that out. Tell us what you liked about the episode. Tell us where we could have improved in this episode. And of course, there's that one question that asks you about topics, suggestions for topics for upcoming episodes. We're always looking for new ideas. We have a pretty good idea of what you guys want to view, but you as a member, you as a participant can always tell us what you want to learn more about from a USA Hockey perspective. Thanks to all your participants. If this is the first time you've been with us, welcome. We're glad that you're here, and we hope to see you on many future Zoomcast episodes, if not watching our on-demand episodes via YouTube. And if you're one of our diehard cult followers that have been here for every single episode, all 52, and we know you are, we look at the roster on a regular basis. Thank you so much for your support and dedication over the course of the 52 episodes that we've done so far. Special thank you to our panelists, Dave LaBuda, Jim Weaver, and Dan Ellison. Thank you so much for taking time out of your personal schedule and giving a little bit more time to USA Hockey on a volunteer basis to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and giving our overall membership an update of where the USA Hockey officiating world stands and where it hopes to go in the future. Thank you so much, guys. And with that, we'll wrap things up. So on behalf of the Officiating Education Program, I'm BJ Ringrose, saying thank you for your dedication to USA Hockey.